Hey, this is Mark with Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi. This is the high-grade Detroit fandom segment that we just are doing now, and I'm here with local comic book pop cultural legend Marty Hirchak, and we're going to be talking about what he's doing today and how he got started doing all this stuff in this great hobby that we all love here. So Marty, let's talk about what's going on right now. I know you got the new Warren Elk show coming out. Tell us a little bit about that show.
That one's going to replace the Clausen show, which ran for 3 years. We're going to have all the local Detroit artists and dealers that, they change every month, but we'll have a lot of artists there to come in and, show what they have. And one of them would be Matt Fazell. He did The Amazing Cynical Man for 40 years. And I've always liked his stuff. He's a great artist, a great writer, and you would think like drawing stick people, it's like anybody can do that, but there's a science to it, and the way he lays out his pages, and it's pretty well done, So we're gonna try to, have people like him showcase artists and try to get them more known. I mean, they're already known, but more exposure doesn't hurt anybody.
So it's going to be a really art-centric comic book show that you're doing here.
Yeah.
Is there anything you're going to be doing different at this new show that you didn't do at the Clausen show?
There'll be a lot of out-of-state dealers at the Elks Hall show.
Is it a bigger venue than the?
No, it's about the same, and it might be even a little smaller because I haven't done it yet. I don't know really what the room is going to look like when it's filled with dealers. So I'm thinking 50 tables. 60 would be maximum. I don't think there's room for that.
Was that the plan all along, to try to focus more on bringing in out-of-state dealers, or was it just they just happened to hear about the show and wanted to be a part of it?
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, after years of dealing on the road, I've met a lot of dealers. So, bringing out-of-state dealers to Michigan is really good for the fans that love comics and want to buy comics because,
exactly.
In the Detroit area, it's always the same old dealers. You can go from show to show to show, and there they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to see something new is why I would want to go to a show, something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling in dealers from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois. And over time, we'll just. It's got to be within reach too, though. I mean, it's got to be realistic. There was a guy from New York that's expressed interest in coming to the show, and I said, "Yeah, if you can make it and want to come on out." That would be Mike Carbo, and I wouldn't put it past him to do that. He's that kind of guy.
And then now you're going to be having your second Detroit Comic-Con coming up in April.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what you got planned for that.
That's going to be better than last year. Last year was really good. We had Richard Comley from Canada, the creator of Captain Canuck came. Mm-hmm. It cost a lot to bring him to Detroit because, getting through customs and all that, and he has to declare all the books he was bringing. That was, it was worth it. But he's not coming this year because he's moving. But anyways, to pick up the slack, we're gonna invite new artists. So there'll be I'm trying to think who's coming this year. It'll be Robin Dale, who did the fanzine price guide, Dan Fogel, who did the Underground Comics price guide.
Oh, I would like to meet him.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and he's like a walking history book. He's met everybody, he's worked with everybody.
He's got that.
He ran the
Underground
Big Apple
guide.
Con for years
in
New York, and he also worked for Robert Bierbaum on the West Coast. At his store, and that he's done everything.
Yeah, I needed a copy of his Underground guide. If he comes, I hope he brings some copies to sell.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. That's why he would be there. I met Dennis Kitchen through him, Kitchen Sink Press.
Yeah.
And so him, and Spain Rodriguez and S. Clay Wilson, we were all in a hotel room just having conversation and talking, and this went on for hours.
Legends, man.
Yeah,
Legends.
they're all great guys. Unfortunately, They've passed.
Is Spain still alive?
Spain died, yeah.
Oh.
I think he had cancer and he passed away
I
a
know
few years ago.
Wilson died. I know he was
Yeah,
gone.
I'm losing track of time because, me and Spain had done an art show together in Detroit at a bar on Michigan Avenue, and that was called the Corktown Inn, and that was a motorcycle themed show, and he was perfect for that. So I wrote him a letter, and he sent me some art through the mail, and that was his contribution to the show. He had done a lot of stuff like Trash Man and underground comics like that, the Road Vultures, and he was a contemporary of all those people like Jay Lynch and Skip Williamson.
Because he was part of that Zap group.
Exactly.
Crumb, Shelton, and
Victor
Wilson.
Moscoso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about here, we're talking about the underground comic scene that started pretty much in the 60s and went through the 70s and, up through the 80s, but it was really big, part of that countercultural movement in the late 60s. And if you haven't heard of it, check it out. There's a lot of stuff online that, a lot of videos and things that discuss it, and it's really fascinating, material to read and learn about if you're into comics. And the comics are just not about superheroes or just humor. Well, this stuff had a lot of humor, but it was like satirical, and it really reflected our culture. But if you haven't heard of it, go check it out. I really implore you to do it. Anyways, getting back to
Yeah, well, there was a lot of Detroit underground comics as well that came out in the 60s, and that one of them was Tales from the Ozone, which was produced by the Grandy Ballroom in Detroit on Grand River Avenue. That included contributions from Carl Lundgren, Gary Grimshaw, Robert Crumb. There was a lot of people involved with that, and the Detroit comics environment and scene back then, it was actually pretty big. It was, it rivaled anywhere else, New York or Chicago or, Houston. It was a very tight group of artists that worked together, and, they did a lot of stuff. Gary Grimshaw worked on Slow Death Funnies #1 and 2. He also did Goose Lake Gags, which was a rock concert on in the western suburbs of Detroit somewhere. And then on top of that, he was the art director for Cream magazine. And then he worked for them for, I want to say 6 years, doing like spot illustrations and all kinds of art. But with Cream, that was like the one meeting between Marvel and Robert Crumb where they met on that cover. It was the Boy Howdy mascot for Cream and Spider-Man on the same cover together. It's never happened before.
Yeah.
It was really cool. So Stan Lee got the idea to do an underground comic, and that's, how do you do that with the Comics Code Authority standing right in your face saying, hold it, you can't do this, So I think what he did was he took the magazine route, which was what Bill Gaines did to thwart the Comics Code.
Black and white
and he
magazine.
published it as a magazine, and Marvel did that for like 4 or 5 issues.
It's why they came out with the Curtis brand.
Yeah,
because it was all magazine. They can get away with more stuff that way.
Exactly, yeah. So they managed to pull it off, DC did not do that, but Marvel did. There was a lot of things Marvel did that DC didn't do, and a lot of things that DC did that Marvel didn't do. But they were always like neck and neck competitors with one another, and their artists would go out to eat and have dinner together in the 70s. They
share,
they're sharing stories and what
secrets.
They're working on, and like when Swamp Thing and Man Thing came out in the 70s, Frank Brunner and Bernie Wrightson would go out to eat and say, "What are you working on?" Yeah, I'm working on the Man Thing.
I think a lot of that happened with Marvel and DC because they had so many similar characters.
Right. Swamp Thing and Man Thing. That would have been a great team up had they got them guys together,
Yeah.
Wouldn't be much dialogue, a lot of thinking. But
it'd be cool. I mean, they did it with Spider-Man and Superman, and why couldn't they do it with some of the more, the lesser known characters?
Right. Yeah.
They figured probably there would be no market for it, maybe because Spider-Man and Superman were like the big, money draws. Right.
In the early 70s, the Comics Code relaxed the restrictions which were in place for years and years. No vampires, no ghouls, no nothing. You can't have anything scary because it might freak a kid out.
The
like,
fallout
oh, wow,
from
I saw
the
vampires, so now I'm upset.
It was the fallout from the whole EC,
Right, exactly. Yes,
the government forcing them to shut down. Yeah. So getting back to the Michigan Con. Who do you got coming to that show again?
Okay, let's see. Bill Morrison from The Simpsons will be there.
Yeah, good old Bill.
Craig Boldman from Archie Comics. Dan Fogel from the Underground Price Guide. Going to have a guy named Johnny Necros from the Pennsylvania area. I'm not quite sure which city he lives in there, but he's in Pennsylvania. He did The Frozen Dead for 25 years, an underground comic that, it's out there, but you have to really look for it. It's not something you're going to find on a shelf.
Like most underground comics, you got to look for,
small print runs, but he's still doing it. So it says a lot for him. He had staying power.
And what about that show? Are you going to be getting a lot of out-of-state dealers coming to that show?
Yeah, yep. There will be about, I would say, a quarter of the show will be out-of-state dealers.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. Just like a collector like myself, I go to pretty much almost every show in the Detroit area, and you run into a lot of the same dealers. You see a lot of dealers have a lot of the same stock.
Right.
You want to run into new people
right.
that have different stuff, because I'm always looking for hard to find things.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're definitely a completist and an archivist.
You got those shows coming out. So tell us a little bit about, like, how did you get started in all this?
Okay, so in the 70s, I was drawing comics at home, and just basically learning how to do it. Basically, I didn't have any teacher, you know what I mean. So I had to teach myself. So that was by example. You're looking at a comic, all right, try to make one. So that's what I did.
Just copy what you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but that eventually led to small press comics, like legitimately drawing a comic and then taking it to a printing store, having multiple copies made, and then selling them at whatever show you could get to, which was, for me, that was Space, the Small Press Alternative Comics Expo.
Here in Detroit?
Run by Bob Corby, and that was in Ohio.
Ohio, okay.
So, I've been doing like road shows for 35 years, 40 years probably. But, close ones within reach. I wasn't going to California or anything like that. I've been there, but not for shows. Anyways, after the small press comics, I did a ton of those, like at least 50, maybe 100. I don't really know how many, but it was a lot. Wow. But that was a good learning experience, because as you're doing it, you're learning what's the best way to tell a story. That's what it's all about anyways. You want to tell a story and have it entertaining. So by the time I did Pop Art Funnies in 2003, I think I was like late 30s when I did that. And that book lasted about 9 issues. And it introduced a lot of new characters that I was thinking of, like Super Bowl and Sonny Boy, a couple of girls, Mandy and Candy. There was Wally the Hot Dog, and a guy named Nitro Nick, who was a hot rodder from Detroit. And he would challenge the cops to street races. So that was a number 2, which that's I don't even have one of those now. I distribute them all out, and I don't even.
I think I own a number 5. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pop Art Funnies number 6 introduced Super Bowl, and at that time the Super Bowl was coming through Detroit, and everybody was talking about it. Like, yeah, Super Bowl 40, you got to be there. Can't miss it. And who can afford the Super Bowl? $1,000 seats. So Detroit had a lot of parties at that time where they, massively cleaned up the city. It was, it was, if you can remember this, they were putting up canvases over abandoned buildings and things like. They were dressing it up for the public. So anyway, so everybody was all hyped up on the Super Bowl, and I was like, well, this sounds like a good time to put out a comic called Super Bowl. And I made it up on the spot, and then I spread it out over 4 issues, where Super Bowl took on a guy named Torpeza, who was another bull, but he was evil. Mm-hmm. And those two, they had a big match where it was all resolved by the end of the issue. Somehow Voodoo Vic got involved with the Eastern Market, and Clark Parker fell under his spell, and that led to him becoming Super Bowl. I don't remember. It was about 20 years ago. So
Was this part of the pop art?
Yeah.
Art funny. Now, what issues were those in?
that was 6, 7, 8, and 9, and I haven't looked at them books.
And 9 was the last issue you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Why'd you stop?
At the time, there was a housing crunch nationwide where, houses were being foreclosed and a lot of businesses went out of business. People were, their whole life was revolved around how well the economy was doing, and which, I could see that. But anyways, my printer went out of business, and I had 3 printers.
Wow.
I was kind of scrambling for a printer and couldn't find one, so I just said, okay, fine, I'll just end this book right here and go on to something else. So then I started doing Fanzine Fantasy in I think it was 2012, and did 4 issues of that with a 5th one planned. And that's always the case. There's always something planned, but you don't, that's why books end, because your resources run dry.
Mm-hmm.
But on the bright side, you did get something out, trying to break into comics was not easy. I wrote to Charlton, to DC, to Marvel, to Mad, and got a ton of rejection letters. So at that point, I decided I better start self-publishing something, because if you're not getting any help from anyone, you got to help yourself. So that's what I did. I said, I'll go the self-publishing route. That eventually led to me getting hired at the Detroit News to do comics for them, because they had seen my work in print.
What year was this?
That was 99.
99, okay.
Yeah, so I started doing freelance for the Detroit News. It was the Tiger Stadium edition, where, the stadium was going to close that year. Mm-hmm. And there was a home run race with Mark McGwire. Mm-hmm. And he was going for his 70th home run.
Sammy Sosa.
Yeah, that was really fun. I went to that last game at Tiger Stadium. It was Mark Fidrich came out on the mound, and he said hello to the fans and waved, took his hat off and waved it, and it was a really special moment. They had Tigers there from the 35 World Series, the 40 World Series. Everybody that was alive, the 68 team was there, and they all took their position on the field. If you're on third base, that's where you'd go, first, second, shortstop. Yeah. And me and my cousin Larry were at that game, and we were watching it from, I think, where were we? We were on the third baseline. But it was really eerie. It was really, like, you could feel, like, the energy in the air. It was amazing,
Yeah, I used to love old Tiger Stadium.
Oh, God, I love that place. Yeah, it was really nice.
So what kind of artwork did you do for that?
I did a comic for the sports page, which was called Let's Talk Baseball. That I did, like, I think 10 or 12 cartoons for that, and they published a Tiger Stadium edition, and where they would pass out that paper at the stadium. So that was 50,000 newspapers, because every game was sold out in '99. It was hard to get a ticket. So when you think about that, 50,000 papers times how many games at home, 83 games. That's millions of papers. It adds up. 50,000.
You do have some of that artwork available, right?
Yeah, I do. I have some of it. I sold one. I sold the pitching ace at an art show.
I like to see that stuff.
Yes, it's pretty cool.
Going even back further, what did you do before all that?
Well, before that, I was doing comics in Greektown on Monroe Street. So that was a comic I did called Collagio the Octopus. I was bartending there at Pegasus. So when I wasn't bartending, I'd go home and make a bunch of comics, print them up at Kinko's, and come back and sell them on Monroe Street. Those are kind of rare today. I don't think I even have one. I might have one stashed away somewhere. I was running into all kinds of people back then that were, doing the same thing I was doing, like Sean Berry, Matt Fazal. They were local artists that were also doing small press publishing. And trying to get a book carried by Diamond back then was really tough. They wanted to see 1,500 copies sell through, which was that was their benchmark that they set for, if you can sell this many books, fine. So the way you would split that would be between the artist, the distributor, and the stores, the retailers. And they turned me down because my comic was priced at 10 cents. That would have been a 3-cent split for everybody.
Well, yeah, you wanted to go with the old nostalgic price, right?
Right, exactly. I did that just because everybody told me it couldn't be done. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. Then it can be done. So I proved them wrong. It was done. It was distributed. I used to go to conventions and pass them out to all the dealers because that's the fastest way to get books out to fans. Hand a stack to a dealer. He's going to go to 15 states, pass them out there. And so I got nationwide distribution through all the dealers that I knew. I knew a guy in San Francisco named Kent Wood that was doing posters, and I gave him a stack of comics. He came to Detroit at an art show that we had downtown on Woodward, and I made sure that everybody there got some comics and left. You know, wherever they went, that's where the comics went. So they're all over the place. You know, they're in Europe. A friend of mine went to Germany, and I gave him a stack of Pop Art Funnies number 4 to take to Germany. And that issue is a little bit crazy. There's like a lot of you know, references to World War II in there, which is, you know, it's
kind of taboo over in Germany.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, they really don't like it there, and it's like that wasn't the intention. The intention was just to get this book out, and it didn't dawn on me that was the case. I didn't know there was an embargo on certain things in West Germany.
Bringing up bad memories.
Luckily for me, I knew a lot of people that were in music back then as well. So they, you know, like even bands that would come through Detroit, I would give them comics to take back to England. And the first issue of Pop Art Funnies had a story in there called Meet the Smarties, which was the band I was in. So that was all 3 of us as cartoon characters, me and Dave and Danny.
What were the biggest inspirations for you to draw? Who were those guys that made you go, I gotta draw like them? I want to do it just like them.
Yeah, well, that would be Steve Ditko, Wally Wood. The entire EC staff was great. You know, my first exposure to EC.
Davis.
Yeah, he was awesome, man. It was the 1973 East Coast reprints were my first chance to see what ECs were. You know, because even then you couldn't find them; they were really scarce. And you know, today if you find them, they're like $500. But the EC stuff was really, really scary. You know, it was really cool. Eerie and Creepy were 2 others that I liked. And
the Warren Publications.
Yeah, Warren Publications. Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Skywald, and then there was the Eerie Publications. That did a lot of reprints of like some of the earlier stuff from the 50s. But all that stuff was great, and it was all black and white. And
right.
I collect that stuff myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Ditko did a wash story with that where he was like using different shades of gray to bring out his art, and it was really effective. Him and Gray Morrow were really good at that. And that's, you know, like today there's nobody publishing stuff like that, like horror magazines, you know. That kind of like went out, and Marvel had a whole line of horror magazines like Savage Tales and the Tales of the Zombie.
It was all that Curtis stuff, yeah.
Right, yeah. Their magazine division.
Dracula Lives.
You know, Morbius the Living Vampire was in those books. The Swamp, not the Swamp Thing, the Man Thing, Ghost Rider. They had just so much stuff. It was like crazy how much stuff Marvel was producing. So one of the things that I read was they bought up all the paper that they could in 1973 or 4. There was a paper shortage in the comic industry, and Marvel and DC bought up all the paper they could find. And that's why the Freak Brothers were printed on pink paper that year. That's all they could get. But the idea that they had was they were going to force Dell and Gold Key off the shelves just by buying up the paper to where they couldn't buy paper to print.
Wow.
So the only other company out there that had their own way of doing this was Charlton, which, you know, they were self-sufficient. They had their own printing plant, their own trucks, their own distribution routes. They never really dealt with Marvel or DC. And
That's when they produced a lot of stuff in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They had a lot of stuff.
they
out
really
there.
did, yeah. It was. I would say they were equal with Marvel and DC in the early 70s for their output.
The war stuff that they put out.
Ghostly Tales, Many Ghosts of Dr. Graves, Haunted,
a lot of it.
Haunted Love, another one. There, and they also had the license to do all the Hanna-Barbera characters, which was really, they did that before Marvel got a hold of it.
That was probably one of their more popular stuff. There's the Hanna-Barbera
Yeah, they
stuff.
had the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Yogi Bear,
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo. Yeah, and that Scooby-Doo from Charlton now is worth a lot of money. That one and the Gold Key version of it.
Didn't Charlton, weren't they the first one to produce Peacemaker also?
Yeah.
And that just blew up in the last few years due to the show on Max.
Right, yeah, and the Watchmen were kind of like based off of Charlton characters, like The Question and, what was that other guy's name? The Blue Beetle, Captain Atom. All the Charlton heroes somehow made their way as an influence into the Watchmen.
Because those characters were kind of more, they looked like they were more from an earlier time, like the 1940s.
Yeah.
Like the traditional original characters, superhero characters.
Yeah, here's one right here, Archie.
Let's talk about some of these books you got here.
This is a great book. What year is this? From 1956. Archie saying goodbye to Veronica. She's getting on a train. And he says, look, Veronica, I'll promise I won't go out with anyone but boys while you're away. How about you promising me? She said, okay, sure, Archie, I promise I won't go out with anyone but boys either. That was always the triangle on that, Betty, Veronica, and Archie. Like, they kept us going for 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
That romance between them. So this is another one, Linda Carter, Student Nurse, a Marvel title. This is the kind of stuff you don't see anymore. It's in the hands of collectors. You just never see this at shows. I've searched the entire country looking for these, and they're just not out there. Okay. So here's another Archie annual. This is another one.
These are beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, the annuals, like everybody did them back then. Archie, Marvel, DC, even EC had Tales from the Crypt as their annual. Crypt of Terror. Can't think of all the titles, but anyways, this is Squad Trunt.
No, these are the fanzines.
Yeah, the fanzines. They were initially
trying to hold them straight up.
Initially published by Jerry Weist, who I met in New York years ago. He was in an elevator, and I got in the elevator with him, and we kind of just nodded at each other and said, hey. And he went his way, I went mine, and that was it. He didn't live much longer after. I think he died a couple years later. Spaceman by Forey Ackerman.
Hold that up.
Fandom Confidential. I've collected this stuff for like 50 years of collecting. Will Eisner with the Spirit. I met Will Eisner in 1990, and I thanked him for all his work. What else are you going to say to a guy like that? One of the biggest names in comics.
Well, it's like what they named like the comic book Hall of Fame after him, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's the Eisner Awards.
Yeah.
Here's Charlton Spotlight. See, I love all this stuff. This is like the nitty gritty of comics, like finding all this information in here that you wouldn't find anywhere else, and you have to look for these kind of books to, it's basically biographical stories of the creators. So like Bill Black, he's from Florida. He's a pretty famous guy in comics. He never worked for Marvel or DC that I know of. He did a lot of work for Charlton and for his own independent comics. He did a lot of women's superheroes. This is Comic Source. These, I think, are from the 80s. Yep, no, 1994. Okay, so early 90s. Back then, comics hadn't blown up yet till like today, $1 million books, I don't think there was a
These were
$1 million.
way before Wizard.
Yeah.
Wizard magazine, which basically blew up when the movies started coming out in the late '80s. When they started turning these properties into motion pictures.
Right.
Wizard was like the magazine to go to find out which movies are going to be made and who's being casted. This stuff predates all that.
Yeah. Yeah, here's another one. This one's got Jack Kirby on the cover, comic scene, and Joe Sinnott, John Byrne, Dick Giordano, and Jack Kirby on the cover. Kirby was still alive at this time, and he died in '94, and the amount of work he produced was incredible. He's done like 100,000 images of comics, of characters. He's thousands of pages. And
a lot of people thought he did all that early Marvel stuff, but people assumed like he was involved in Spider-Man. He was not involved in Spider-Man.
Not in the creation. He did do a few issues with Ditko, and he did do the cover of Spider-Man 1, inked by Ditko, and Amazing Fantasy 15, also inked by Ditko. And then he also jumped in on number 10 and did that image of Spider-Man where he's hanging from a web facing the Enforcers.
Okay.
That was a Kirby-drawn Spider-Man with Ditko art in the background.
He wasn't a regular contributor on
No,
Spider-Man.
not at all. No. Yeah. For years, people wondered who was really responsible for that. It was Steve Ditko that drew the costume and created the look and the characters and all the villains. This one focuses on the TV stars of comics, which was Christopher Reeve as Superman in '78. He became a household name after that movie. Spider-Man with the CBS TV series.
Oh yeah, that was a cool time. That's the time when I was growing up and as a kid, and this stuff was awesome.
Yeah, the Hulk, all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is a letter from Marvel, and it's just something I picked up somewhere from just buying collections. It was somewhere in there, and it's from the European arm of Marvel in London, sending a thank you letter to a fan that bought something from them. I don't know what. Please accept 25 pence refund on money sent for unavailable Fooms. Someone trying to buy Foom magazine. I don't have an accurate count of how many books I have, but I would say it's somewhere around 30,000.
Now, you're doing a lot of promoting these days, a lot of show promotion. Do you plan on getting back into the art work? Yeah,
I do. I mean, right now I'm promoting shows because I don't have a job, so this is my job.
Well, you have a job. This is your job.
This is my job.
Yeah, don't knock it.
Right.
You're self-employed.
I'm self-employed.
You're doing what most people dream of doing.
Yeah, right.
It's just they just don't have the courage to.
Yeah.
Or just maybe the life situation doesn't work out for them to do it.
Yeah, I never would have believed this would have happened, but it is my life now. But it's not the way I really want to make a living. I could walk away from shows tomorrow and say I'm done. If I could get a comic that was in print, that was self-sufficient, self-sustaining, you can live off of it, like Charles Schultz with Peanuts.
Generating that passive income, which we all wish we could do.
It's not an easy field to break into, even at my age. Now I'm 59, so
a lot of luck involved there too.
Still working at it, still trying to get somewhere with it. But it's hard. It's like there's a million artists. You know what I mean? There's
a lot of competition. Yeah.
There's a lot of people trying to do something, and
you can't do something different.
Right.
Well,
yeah, exactly. You have to do something different. I got a lot of ideas, and some of them may come out next year. We'll see, because whatever money I make off the shows will probably go into self-publishing. For instance, last year I did the program guide for the Detroit comic show. So that was kind of like getting back into comics. I did some illustration for that, hand lettering, and then I filled it out with hand lettered names of all the people that participated in it.
No, for most of your shows, as you can see, we up having the wall here. You got all the posters for all the different Clausen shows. You did pretty much all the artwork for all these posters.
Yeah.
Right? So you're still in the art. You're still doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm doing that. And, you know, the posters are a way to announce the show, and I love doing them.
Keeping
It's
your
fun.
hand in the game of art.
Right. Yeah.
Those are some great looking posters. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very nostalgic looking.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
all old school. It's
old school. It's great.
Yeah.
Because to a lot of people, old school is new again. Because a lot of people are not familiar with that old school stuff. If you just like put a little, like, you know, a little different thing into it, you can make it look fresh. That's basically plagiarism is well, actually, originality is well disguised plagiarism.
okay.
That's basically what it is.
Everything's been done.
Yes.
The farther you go back, the less likely they're going to know the source of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's something I read a long time ago. They said the best artists that are swipe artists, they know how to disguise their art. You know, you never want to take a direct swipe from anybody.
It's too obvious, you know.
Yeah, it's obvious, and it's like cheating, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be original.
Yeah.
You know, like these Marvel posters that I've got on the wall, you know, they came out in 1971. They were really cool, you know, black light, glow in the dark. You'd find them at head shops or, you know, Kmart's or whoever sold them back then.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I only know one person that has a complete set. That's Bill Morrison. He's got a complete set of all of them.
I know Jamie Stewart likes to collect those.
Yeah, Jamie Stewart is another one. He doesn't have a complete set yet.
Yeah.
I've sold him, I think, one or two. And these two, I just really like them. I don't think I'm going to sell them at all. Just something about Iron Man and the Silver Surfer. It's just great art. It's really, really inspirational. You know, like that's another thing. It's like I collect art because that's how you would learn. You know, like how pages are drawn. You know, you got to get the right size, and then from there, like today, it's 10 by 15 is the standard size for comics.
It's going to be interesting. 500 years from now, you're going to be seeing a lot of these, you know, this art in museums.
Yeah,
just like the Mona Lisa.
Right.
And you know, Van Gogh's self-portrait. You're going to see that stuff is what people are going to be going to museums to see.
Right. Yeah. I believe that also.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna. You know, it's a great example. Like the 20th century was really the high point of comics. They actually started in the 19th century with the Yellow Kid, 1897. They got him started in the papers, and that's because the yellow journalism that was, you know, it took over the American newspapers. People.
That was the tabloid stuff. What? Like?
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of like sensationalized news.
William Randolph Hearst was a yellow journalist. Yeah.
Right. They started the Cuban-American War, the Spanish-American War, over a fake story planted in the newspaper of U.S. ships blown up in Havana Harbor. So now we have to invade Cuba. You know?
Yeah.
So that's what they did. Teddy Roosevelt went down there and
pretty much the origin of
ran
comic
up San Juan
books.
Hill and ran out the people in charge and took it over. And when I was a kid, I would build models. Like the people that are doing it know that, okay, I can set up a King Kong here and a Godzilla here, have them face each other, whatever. That would be a way of drawing that scene for the comic that came out years later, Godzilla. There's something to be said for action figures and models. It's like tabletop modeling. A lot of artists do that to set up scenes for comics. It's like, you know, live action, one frame at a time.
They're getting a three-dimensional look at them. They're able to see with the lighting and everything, so it makes it easier for them to draw it that way.
Right, it's more accurate.
Yeah.
You know, I know a guy in, I think he's from Pennsylvania, Wayne Foucher. He does that. He does tabletop modeling and uses that in his comic work, and it's always great. It's really realistic.
That's why if you go to art stores, they sell those little those little statues that you can move around with the little armatures and stuff for artists.
Yeah.
To draw movement and things like that.
Yeah.
I have one of those, which is kind of cool.
I have one. I don't know where it is. It's in a pile of junk somewhere.
Marty, it was a pleasure talking to you. This was just a lot of fun and great conversation, and really appreciate you spending some time with us. And this is Mark with Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi's pretty much new segment, the high grade Detroit fandom segment.